Hey, Jeremy here with Outfast, and we're talking about lease renewals and terminations today, as well as month-to-month leases. We don't typically do a lot of month-to-month stuff, but if for some reason the tenant needs an extra month or two, it's not the end of the world. We will just maybe charge them a little bit more and add administrative fees. So month-to-month is usually more of a benefit for the tenant than it is to the owner. Or if a resident's sort of been paying kind of not on time and a little bit weird towards the end of a lease renewal, we may want to just keep them on month to month so they can prove themselves again before we do another 12-month renewal. So all of our renewals typically go for 12 months. The only time we may do a little bit shorter, a little bit longer would be we really try to keep renewals out of November and December if we can for the owner's benefit, because those are the slowest times of the year, right? So if we can avoid and just have a lease end a little bit early, typically we'll try to push it just into end of January, so that you don't have a potential vacancy in those months. So that's something that we do try to do if we can. And so the lease is going to state that resident, us or the resident, needs to give other party 60 days notice if we're not going to renew or tenant wants to move out. If they give late notice, there are some penalties as well that potentially could apply if the tenant gives really late notice. But we really try to proactively work 3, maybe even 4 months ahead of time to get the renewal discussion going between the client. Client may decide to sell the property, not want to renew. A tenant could be just sort of constantly late throughout the year where we just want to non-renew. And so we'll sort of work on that. We try to work on that ahead of time and discuss if we're going to keep the resident, but also renewal increases or keeping rents the same. So the market's really going to dictate that a lot as well. If we keep the rent the same, do a small bump, or if the tenant's been severely under market already, maybe you bought a property where you're stuck with a low paying lease on a tenant, we may bring it up to market, which could force the resident to move out, or they just continue to take the increase and stay. So lease renewal is typically 12 months. And tenant just signs that stuff through a simple lease renewal form with us, and obviously we have some charges for that to complete that process for you guys, but pretty standard. A couple months ahead of time, we'll start that discussion between owner and resident who wants to stay. Sometimes you'll have two residents where one moves out, and we may just want to qualify income that the one person staying can pay for it, adding or removing people to that sort of thing, lease process. So renewals are pretty standard for that, pretty easy process for that. And one thing that we'll also do, like I mentioned with the month-to-month residents, is if they do stay month-to-month, we'll analyze that throughout the year, like every quarter or something. We might say, okay, do we really want to keep this resident still maintaining month-to-month status, or go ahead and renew them for something a little bit longer? And then if a resident decides to move out, that'll be updated in their portal. They can proactively put it in their portal as well. And we'll put it in our move out board where we check out upcoming move outs. And what we do is we schedule the utilities to go into our name. So you don't have to do any of that for the day after their vacancy or their lease ends. And then we have lock changes usually completed that day after. So usually it's like on the 1st or something. We'll change locks, get access. Utilities are moved into our name that same day. Next day, we have our inspection completed. So throughout the year, the resident may do some inspections for us as well. And hopefully they'll complete their move out report, which gives us just a little bit of heads up of what we might be walking into. And we can compare our move out reports to what they filled out when they moved in to see a very easy side-by-side comparison to what they may have damaged on the property. There could be wear and tear on the property. So not all repairs that need to be made at a security deposit claim upon move out can fall on the tenant. There may be some stuff that's legitimate wear and tear, right? If the carpets have been there for 10 years and they're not stained, but they just gotta have to be replaced. Painting sometimes can fall on that. A lot of times that is something that we would ding the tenant for, but it just depends, right? Tenant's been there for 10 years and they paid on time. We may negotiate a little bit there. So that's usually what we handle. We're going to make those decisions on your behalf for you, unless there's a circumstance where you might ask for some input, or if we don't have a report of when they did move in, like let's say other management company didn't do it, somebody didn't provide it, then we're going to use sort of our best judgment based on the condition of the property and some things to sort of make an educated guess around it. So we don't want owners to think of the security deposit as free money. We can both be sued about what we claim for if we don't do it correctly, or charge them for something that they didn't necessarily damage, or we can't really prove that how it was when they moved in. We just want to do the right thing, approach it reasonably, and not think of it as an extra source of income. And then once we determine what we are going to charge them for, if anything, if we're not taking anything, we can just send the money right back to the resident electronically, or we'll mail them something. But there's certain guidelines that we have to do for security deposit claim process, where we have to document what we have. we have to just resend it certified mail to a new forwarding address, or if a forwarding address was not provided, we would go ahead and send it to the last known address, which would be the address that they occupied. If they have a dispute over it, we can always deal with it later, which sometimes they do. But we'll complete that process for you. There is a certain timeline and check. If we are not taking any funds and we are returning 100% of the deposit, we do have to return it within 14 days in Florida, or we have up to 30 days if we are making a claim to go ahead and process. So there's a timeline that drives some of these decision-making things as well with the deposits, but that's kind of how it's handled. Once the tenant moves out, we have the scope of work from the inspection. We're going to go ahead and put together a requested estimate, send it out from vendors. So just to recap, lock gets changed, inspection gets done. That inspection is going to create the scope of work that we're going to bid out for your property for all the repairs. So that way we're also right away working on the cost to turn it over. That's how we come up with the amounts to ding the tenant and get your approval to make the repairs. Again, if it's $1,000 repairs, maybe 500 of it's coming from the deposit, maybe 500 of it's is just like recommendations like new mulch or something to help with the curb appeal, pressure washing, where it's not necessarily a tenant thing, but it's something that we want to do from a leasing standpoint. So some of the repair estimate funds could come from the deposit possibly, or it's owner improvement that they're doing to the property. And then we get your approval, schedule the vendors, get everything completed, and then start our marketing process over again. So hopefully that gives you guys some clarity about how we handle that stuff.